Okay. All right. My name's Howie Hawkins. I live in Syracuse, New York. I've been active in what we used to call the movement with a capital T and capital M since the 1960s. Civil rights, anti-war. I went in the Marine Corps after I was drafted to resist the war. I was a carpenter and then a teamster, recently retired. I was at the first national organizing meeting, the Green Party in 1984, been active in that ever since. But I was active in independent politics going back to the Peace and Freedom Party in 1968. But more important than me is who I'm representing. I didn't plan to, run for president, but a bunch of Greens around the country, people I respect, Sherry Honkler and John Baraka, the former vice presidential candidates, Matt Gonzalez in San Francisco. I could go through a lot of people, but people I respect and asked me to run. So I'm here representing really a collective leadership to try to get a message out. And the message, well, the plan, the two objectives of the campaign are, one, to advance what we're calling an eco-socialist Green New Deal. And the second is to build the Green Party into a major party, position us so as we go into the 2020s, we can elect thousands of people and make a difference, because the two major parties are basically failing on life and death issues like the climate crisis, like the new nuclear arms race, where we're modernizing our nuclear weapons to the tune of $1 trillion, started under Obama, continued under Trump. And what they're doing in the modernization is putting tactical nukes into conventional battlefields, which is madness, because they won't stay tactical. It'll go strategic and annihilate us all. And so we're into a new Cold War with Russia, and we're out of the Intermediate Nuclear Force Treaty. START ends next year. Trump says it's a worthless treaty. This is crazy, and the two major parties are behind this modernization. There's no real dissent. That's why the Green Party needs to be in this election. And thirdly, the working class, our living standards have declined. Our life expectancies are declining. We're at the point now where people in poor counties have life expectancies 20 years less than those in more affluent counties. So that's a life and death issue for working people. That's, just an everyday crisis, to make the rent, the utilities, put food on the table, pay some outrageous medical bills or student loan. So these are the issues that the two major parties are not solving. And that's why the Green Party's got to step up as we go forward. So this eco-socialist Green New Deal, that was our signature issue for the last decade, or the Green New Deal, we called it. And Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and some other Democrats brought it into the Congress without attribution. And what's worse is that they watered it down. They extended the deadline for zero emissions from 2030 to 2050. And you give politicians another 20 years and they're going to do nothing. They are silent on a central part of the Green New Deal, which is to ban fracking and all new fossil fuel infrastructure. Because if that fossil fuel infrastructure is built, the investors want their money back. We're locked into it for another 40 years, and that's a climate holocaust. And then we're calling for a transfer of resources from the military-industrial complex to build out this Green New Deal, clean energy, and really transforming all our productive systems, from agriculture and manufacturing to transportation and housing. And we can't do that if we're spending $1 trillion a year on the military. So there are two major parts to the Green New Deal, as I see it. First is an economic Bill of Rights. This is something Roosevelt called for in his 1944 and 1945 State of the Union addresses. And he called for Congress to enact legislation so everyone had the right to a job with government as employer of last resort, to income support so everybody has an income above poverty, to a decent home, comprehensive health care, and a good education. And none of these rights have been enacted, despite the fact that Democratic presidents have had a majority in both houses for at least one session for every Democratic president from Roosevelt to Obama. So the Democrats have not got it done. The Civil Rights Movement picked this economic Bill of Rights up, 1963 March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. They put it into a budget, the Freedom Budget, in 1966, and King carried forward with the Poor People's Campaign. And when they went to Washington, you remember King's speech, the dream speech. But before he got to the dream, he talked about the promissory note. And that was basically a down payment on reparations. He said, we came here to cash in a promissory note and the government tells us the Bank of Justice has insufficient funds. But he was there to say he didn't believe that, and they were there to get that promissory note paid for, to get these rights realized. So we got to pick up that torch. And I see the Economic Bill of Rights as a down payment on reparations. We don't have to wait for the study. We support Sheila Jackson-Lee's bill to study how to best do reparations, carrying forward Conyers' old bill. But while that's happening, we can enact the Economic Bill of Rights right now. And the Green Economy Reconstruction Program is the other part. And as I said, it's not just going to clean energy, it's transforming all the productive sectors so they're sustainable, both in respect to energy and respect to the other environmental crises that they're causing, like pesticides and habitat destruction from agriculture, basically depopulating the planet of insects. We're losing 2 or 3% a year. And when they collapse, ecosystems collapse, food production collapses, and civilization collapses. That's what I mean by climate holocaust. That's threatening our lives. So that is the theme around which we're framing the message of the campaign. And there are a lot of issues I'll be happy to answer your questions on, hundreds of issues. But that's the core message. And then the other piece is organizing the Green Party. We are known around the country as reliable activists. We show up and people respect that. But in terms of organizing, both maintaining our own organizations and reaching out to the communities to which we want people involved in the Green Party, we're not so good. We don't have the skills that a union organizer or a community organizer has. So one of the things my campaign wants to do is to hire organizers to help green locals get on the ballot. First of all, we want to get on the ballot for the first time in all 50 states in the District of Columbia. So we need to hire organizers for that. And we can do a lot of that ballot access now. There are about 20 states where we can be petitioning now. The Greens always wait till next year, the year of the election. But we can come out of this year with over 40 states. We got over 20. I think Texas is about to get it. Did the governor sign that bill? I know he's about to, or it's pending. And then another 20 states we can do the petition. So next year we have 10 or less states, and then we can get all the states. And then we want to turn our organizers to helping the locals with respect to organizing, and come in and consult with locals and help them do what we need to do, which is expand the base. Because if the Green Party is going to become a major party, we got to expand the base, particularly among those that undervote, vote in lower numbers. That's the working class, that's the youth, and that's the people of color. And the Green Party's got to build that base, and if we do, that's the future. And I think where we're going in the 2020s is that we're going to send the GOP to the dustbin of history. It represents the remnant of the racist, white nationalist forces, which are a minority in this country. And that leaves the Democrats as the establishment party and us as the People's Party. I think that's where we want to be headed. And I think I probably used up at least 5 minutes, but I'll stop there and be happy to answer your questions.
Go ahead. Question.
I have no questions.
I have a question.
Hal has a question.
I have a question.
Okay, Hal has a question.
Hal Ridley Jr. Hey, I'm going to try to be a candidate in Southeast Texas, 36, and part of the beast, belly of the beast, actually south of the belly, a little bit south of the intestines. So really corporate place full of the pollutants and everything you're talking about. Y'all got me on the ballot in 16, and I got 11% of the vote, 24,000 votes. No money and no campaign. I'm going to try to talk to these people. And I'm going to be up at the convention, but we need a complete metamorphic change. We can't really work within a system that is so polluted and so corrupt. It'll end up corrupting us. We need to have a dramatic change. So that's exactly what I want to talk about. And I really like your attitude and your talk. I'm all in for you. Thanks. There's no question.
Well, I got a comment. You want to hear it?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I didn't get to the eco-socialist part because the brother just talked about we need a metamorphosis. We got to nationalize big oil. You know, Chevron and the Koch brothers are not going to reinvest their earnings in renewables. So we got to take them over. We got to take the railroads over so we can rebuild an electrified rail system for freight, intercity, high-speed rail, and light rails within cities. We need to take over the arms industry. So they are not promoting war and export of arms, but they are, you know, just providing what we need to defend ourselves. So that is the beginning. And one thing we did during World War II was the federal government took over or built a quarter of the manufacturing capacity of this country. It was federally owned. And we need to do nothing less to defeat climate change. They turned industry on a dime to build the arsenal of democracy that defeated the Nazis. We need to do nothing less to defeat climate change. But the difference is, after the war, they just gave all those assets to the super rich and their giant corporations. We would give these to the workers, spread the wealth, give it to them as worker co-ops, and which would have a more equitable distribution of income coming out of those co-ops. And I think that's a part of the eco-socialist Green New Deal as well.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. The Green Party has part of its platform on monetary reform. And to follow up on the question about the metamorphosis of society that we need, you know, right now, the banking cartel, as I call them, the Federal Reserve System, they issue all the money and basically they control who gets the money. So people who support the corporate agenda are paid and people who don't support it don't get any money. Do you have any thoughts on that topic?
Yeah, I support the plank called Greening the Dollar. I, you know, supported it when it first came up. I've spoken at the American Monetary Institute's conferences. I spoke at the Eastern Economics Association recently. I consider this the modern greenback proposal, like the populist movement, the farmer labor populist movement, Greenback Labor Party, the People's Party, between the Civil War and 1900, where they wanted the government to issue U.S. notes, greenbacks, instead of having the banks create money by creating credit. That's debt-linked money. Now, the way we do it today is the Treasury sells bonds on a primary market, and that creates debt that the government has to pay back. And it's really a transfer of wealth from regular people to the Wall Street interests. The Fed can support that by buying those bonds on the secondary market. That's called quantitative easing. So I think the preferable way to put money into the economy is by nationalizing the Fed, having a monetary authority in the Treasury, and having it spend money into the economy on things like these Green New Deal projects. Now, pending that change, there's the modern monetary theory folks who say we can borrow as much money as we want and spend it as long as the US dollar is the reserve currency of the world. That's true, and I think it's worth doing. Sometimes they call it green quantitative easing. That's where the Fed would buy those bonds issued by the Treasury on the secondary market. So then the Treasury would have money to spend on these Green New Deal projects. The difference between the quantitative easing done after the Great Recession was that bailed out the banks. We would use it to bail out the people in the planet. And I prefer the greenback proposal, the greening the dollar, because it's debt-free money. But if we can't get that, I'm willing to do the green quantitative easing to get the resources we need. But saying that, I think a lot of those resources are available through the tax system and the transfer of resources from the military budget to the Green New Deal, and then taxing the rich. They have $6 trillion that's sitting idle in liquid assets. They're not investing in productive assets. They're doing financial manipulations, which further concentrate who owns what we already have in terms of productive assets. So through progressive taxation and transferring funds from the military industrial budget, we will have most of the money we need for the Green New Deal.
Hello, can you explain how you're funding your campaign?
Was the question, how am I funding my campaign?
Yes.
With lots of small contributions from people like you.
Any PAC money or corporate money?
PAC or corporate money?
No corporate money, no entity linked to a profit-making enterprise, including trade associations. I will take, I don't expect to get much, but I will take money from union PACs, the PACs of community organizations, peace organizations, environmental organizations, if those organizations are democratic. I see this as a class question. Is the money coming from the people or from the corporate elite? And people say, well, we can't take any PAC money. They confuse the union PACs with the corporate PAC. And we got to face the reality is that going back to Obama in 2008, all the Democrats say, we don't take corporate PAC money. But they get a lot of corporate money because they have the corporate executives bundle money and give money much higher than the limit of PACs, which is $5,000. They get the dark money, they get the super PAC money, they get the independent expenditure money. So the PAC money is kind of passe in terms of the way corporate financing goes right now. But my position is the Greens should take money from people's organizations. If we're going to have a movement that transforms the society, we need a three-legged stool. We need the party, we need the unions, and we need the co-ops. And we should be an alliance.
And then just to follow up, how does that square with the National Green position on accepting PAC money?
I don't believe the Green Party has a position on PAC money per se. The position I understand, the position I've advocated is we don't take the money of corporate interests, for-profit interests, and we limit the donations so that a few rich folks can't have excessive influence. Now, the presidential campaign, the maximum donation is $2,800 for the primary and $2,800 for the general. And, you know, we won't take any money larger than that. I don't expect many people, if any, to give that much.
Thank you so much for joining us today. My question is this: you mentioned reaching out, the need for the party to reach out into underrepresented communities like Latinos and Blacks. Okay, what about when those people come into the party, there are race relations issues, definitely here in Texas. How should party leaders handle the transitioning? Because we have a lot of older white people who are simply not accepting of different people coming into the party and having a voice. We have major respect issues here.
Okay, well, my position on racists is we got to take them out of power so that racially oppressed communities are not subject to their decisions. So if there's a problem with some old white guys treating Blacks and Latinos bad, then we got to organize more Blacks and Latinos so they can outvote those old white guys. I'm all for persuading them. I'm all for them going to race relations workshops and whatnot. But attitudes change slow, and people don't even know they got attitudes sometimes. So the short-term remedy is to just change who's making the decisions so that they're not able to exclude, segregate, discriminate. So that's my approach.
They're really good at changing the rules on you, though.
Say what now?
They're really good at changing the rules to make sure that they stay in power even after you vote them out.
Yeah, I think one thing we got to change in the culture of the Greens is when we have differences, instead of putting them on the table and talking them out, we tend to avoid them because we're trying to seek consensus. And then after the meeting, people are changing rules, talking to their people behind the scenes, and the conflict goes on, but it's not open. And then people that are newer don't know the game being played. So I think we got to like put it on the table, talk it out, understand we're all doing the best we can here, and accept that we're going to have differences. I mean, we got to tolerate differences. You know, on most major questions in the Green Party in New York, I lose. I mean, I'll give you an example. They decided not to run a candidate for U.S. Senate, which really made me angry because I busted my bottom to get on the ballot here in New York. I ran 3 times for governor to get the votes. And they decided, oh, we don't have the capacity, et cetera. I lost that vote. And then they turned around and asked me to run. So you know, I could live with the fact that I lost some votes. I could go through a bunch of votes, but I think we all got to learn to do that. Sometimes we're not going to get our way, but there's things that unite us, and that's more important than our individual concerns on a particular issue.
Thank you.
Howie, would you nationalize the banks?
I would socialize them. In other words, I wouldn't make them all owned by the federal government. Part of the Green New Deal is we should have a public development bank in every congressional district. You know, the military industrial complex puts facilities in every congressional district. We're going to build a green industrial complex with public banks like the Bank of North Dakota, to partner with community banks, community development credit unions, and so forth. I don't want them. So in some cases, the point is to democratize the economy. And sometimes, and often, it's better to have that control at a more local level than the federal government. On the other hand, there's certain things that should be nationalized, like big oil, so we can coordinate it nationally. So I'm all for socializing the banking sector. I think that's key.
Okay, so.
All right, I think that's it then. Last call questions, we're good then?
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you very much. I hope to see you when I get to Texas.